The thing about oral contracts is that it's actually recognized by law. The only difficulty is enforcing it because you won't be able to tell the terms and conditions. Actually, it's going to be one person said this, another person said that. So it's better to put everything down in writing. And then when you put it down in writing, you have to check it, make sure that everything that you've agreed on is contained in that agreement. And then any other prior oral contract that is made, everything would be contained in the written agreement. Businesses, before they even get to the point where they are employing people, they should abreast themselves with the labor laws. You should understand it. If you are not able to understand it, you can engage a lawyer to go through the laws with you. But I'll say that you have to understand them. You have to know that you have to comply with them. Also, you have to have written contracts because you never know what an employee would turn around and do to you.
Welcome to the ABC Show, Nella.
Thank you.
All right, it's good to have you here.
Thank you. It's a pleasure.
All right. So just to dive in straight, I know you're a lawyer. You've been practicing for a while now.
Yeah.
And I know you are smart. I know you are smart, right from our engagements in our early days. What really inspired you into pursuing law? Why law? Upon everything else that you could do.
Okay, so when I was way younger, initially I wanted to be a nurse because one of my aunties was a nurse, just because of that.
Okay.
But then later on, at home, they used to call me lawyer, just because just because I used to ask a lot of questions.
Okay.
So that's one particular uncle of mine. He used to call me lawyer. But I didn't take it serious because I was young, obviously. So in school, basic school, that's at Richard School, we had a career fair, and then some professionals came to speak to us. Amongst them were some two lawyers, female lawyers.
Okay.
And then I just admired how smartly they were dressed, how eloquently they spoke, and that inspired me. Yeah, so from then on, I had the idea, being a lawyer would be a nice profession. So the same thing happened in SHS as well. We had a career fair, and then same two lawyers, female lawyers came to speak to us. Not the same, but female lawyers came to speak to us. And then from then on, I was like, it won't be bad. So that was what inspired me.
Okay. So, moving into secondary school, you didn't know what you wanted to do? Or even then you knew you wanted to come up and then be a lawyer?
I didn't know.
Okay.
Yes, in SHS, I wasn't too sure. Maybe I thought of going into journalism, thought of doing other things, but not specifically. It was one of the options though, but not specifically that.
All right. So now you are practicing. Do you specialize in any area, or do lawyers also specialize?
Yeah, lawyers specialize. Okay. But for me, I've not really taken a particular area of law. Okay. I do various the general practice.
Okay.
I do family law, I do immovable property, I do intellectual property, amongst others.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, that's good. Being a business person, as someone who is in the entrepreneurial space here, I've had my own fair share of having to go to court and legal issues here and there. What would you say is the most common legal issue that small businesses deal with here in Ghana? Based on your practice.
Based on my practice, I would say some of the common would be compliance with the law.
Okay.
Most small businesses are not familiar with the laws that regulate them. In terms of registration, in terms of sometimes even taxes. In tax compliance, that is also an issue. You see GRA officials going around chasing people. Some of them don't even register their business. They don't know they have to register it. They just find a kiosk somewhere, they start their business. They know that all they want is just to make money. But I think that is one of the major issues, compliance.
Okay, so what should an entrepreneur consider in choosing a legal structure for their business? So you can either be a sole proprietor, limited why should I be a limited liability and not a sole proprietor?
Okay, so one of the main things you should look at is also the registration process.
Okay.
The registration process varies from different. When it's a sole proprietorship, you have to register the business name.
Okay.
If it's a partnership, you have to register the partnership name. If it's a company, you have to. And they all have different registration processes. Looking at the period of registration, looking at the costs involved, looking at all the regulatory issues that are involved. Also, you have to look at liability protection of the individuals behind the corporation. If it's a sole proprietorship, there's no limited liability when it comes to debt or any sort of issue. So if there's any issue that comes up where the business name or the individual behind the business is liable for any debt or is required to pay off any debt or settle any debt, the person's personal property will be attached to settle all those debts. Unlike a company properly so-called, with a company, the liability is limited to that of the company only. So in that sense, the company is separate from the individuals that run it. Yes,
so for me, I think when I started running a restaurant, I first registered as a sole proprietorship. One, because it was easy to do, and I didn't think that I needed to. It was just a restaurant. I didn't need anybody supporting financially and all that. So I registered as a sole proprietorship. But moving forward, we needed investment to scale up our work. Then it came that I had to register as a limited liability company. In fact, when we started looking for funds to scale up, we had to change our registration process and become a limited liability company. It wasn't even about protection from liability for us. It was more about opening up for people to come in. So if I register as a limited liability company, beyond the protection, are there other benefits? Because for me, it allowed other people to invest into the company. And then what you mentioned about it being limited to the company, so 2 years down the line, we went down the drain, and we had investors who had invested into the business. So I've experienced what you're talking about. But aside that, is there anything else that I should look for if I want to pick a legal structure? Should I worry about investments, whether taxes? Does all these things come in?
Yes, you mentioned taxes. Taxes is also very important. So with the company, you'd have to pay your taxes regularly. If you have employees, you'd have to pay taxes on their behalf as well. But then with the sole proprietorship, it is the business and the individual that pays the taxes. Yes.
Okay. I think majority of businesses in Ghana are either not registered or owned as sole proprietorship. So, and I've jokingly told a few friends that if I have to go back in time, set up a food business again, I won't go for a limited liability company because I can remember the number of people, the things that I had to do just because we had changed that status from a sole proprietorship into a limited liability. I mean, that for me is my experience. And when I drive around town, I see chop bars that are even bigger than we were when we expanded our production, but maybe they just have a name there and they are operating properly. Would you say that from a business point of view, I'm right to say that, or you think that legally you still need to register?
So the thing is, if you are registering a sole proprietorship with your personal name or with your surname or your initials, you don't have to register. That's the thing about it. But if you are registering or you are going to operate your business under a name other than your personal name, that one you'd have to register. So you have to go to the Registrar General to go and conduct a search, make sure that their name is not registered. But if it's a personal name, you don't have to register.
Okay. So I also have done a lot of stuff with other people without contracts, and this takes me down to how we went down when our business went down. So, and you have reviewed a few contracts for me. I remember when we were doing the Fafraha branch, I had a partnership deal, sent that to you to review. I'm sure you remember that. How relevant is a contract in running a business in this our Ghana? And I'm saying this because I've had people like suppliers, you don't have more like a verbal contract. So we know that you're supposed to supply me tomatoes maybe twice a month, and that is we have a verbal agreement. Down the line, I realized that when things went bad, those that had written contracts were easier to deal with. Those that were verbal had a lot of issues to deal with. What would be your recommendation in this case?
So the thing about oral contracts is that it's actually recognized by law. The only difficulty is enforcing it, because you won't be able to tell the terms and conditions. Actually, it's going to be one person said this, another person said that. So it's better to put everything down in writing. And then when you put it down in writing, you have to check it, make sure that everything that you've agreed on is contained in that agreement. And then any other prior oral contract that is made, everything would be contained in the written agreement.
Okay.
Yes.
So we are better. So even if I'm a sole proprietor and I'm doing business with a tilapia supplier, I'm better off even if it's a half-page contract. You recommend that?
Yes. I recommend that it should be put in writing, because you never know what will happen in the near future. Where there's a dispute, you have a point of reference. You can go back to your contract and go and check whatever is in it. Make sure that it is the other party who breached the contract, or maybe it was on your part that you breached the contract. Yeah. And I believe that would help you even settle your disputes before you even go to the courts.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So what would you consider as a solid element of a business contract? So am I okay just saying, okay, Miss A will supply me tilapia this amount of times and I'll pay X amount? Is that enough, or there should be elements that shows that this contract is actually binding?
Okay, so for a contract, you have to state the parties, obviously. Okay. You have to state the addresses. You have to state consideration. Also, you have to state the terms and conditions of the contract. So, also, most importantly, you have to state the obligations. State it very clearly. Party A is supposed to supply this. Party B is supposed to pay this set of amount.
Okay.
And you also have to state the term, and in case of anything, the termination as well. So the term states the duration of the contract. If you want to supply the tilapia for about 2 years, along maybe the business that you run for about 2 years, you should state it. If you want to terminate too, there's a clause that should be included. So for the termination, you should state that the contract will be terminated. Like, you have to give prior notice to the other party so that they are able to mitigate any losses that may come about. Also, you have to state the dates. That's also very important.
Okay.
You have to state dispute resolution clauses too are very, very important. Okay. Yes, I also always recommend that. You can also quickly refer to ADR.
Okay.
I would always recommend ADR before resorting to the courts. Yes. Okay. ADR would include negotiation, mediation. Those are more cheaper options. So you can just do that and settle the disputes rather than going all the way to the courts. Right. So the court will be your last option.
More of a last option. Yes. So we all agree that this, in case there's any disputes, these are the steps that we want to take.
Yes.
Should I necessarily involve a lawyer in this process? Because usually when you are drafting a contract, in fact, from the beginning, and what I've done in the past, you are going to find a template out there that you could use to draft, and then you probably have someone to review it for you. There are times where, so recently someone sent me a contract to do some work. I look at the contract, and based on that, I said I wasn't going to move forward with what they asked for again. But then again, I said to myself that, okay, I'm better off now because at least I know what the person had in mind.
Yeah.
Because if it wasn't for the contract, I didn't know that all the things that were stated in the contract there were things that they expected from me. But because it was written, I said, okay, instead of us moving forward and having issues, let's leave it there. And this is me not showing it to a lawyer. In fact, when I got a contract, I highlighted a few points and said, okay, I would have to show this to a lawyer and see whether it made sense. But I just slept over it and said, okay, just forget about the whole thing and engage somebody else. Do I need to engage a lawyer when the contract is done or when I'm drafting the contract?
I think you should engage a lawyer when you are drafting, just to avoid any future disputes.
Okay.
It will be in your best interest to consult a lawyer to look at it for you before you go ahead and put your signature on it.
And I can again share experience on the facts where you say you should consult a lawyer before you even draft the contract. And this has to do with the rent issue that we had. the contract that we had residential property, even though we had agreed in person that, with the owner of the property that we're going to use it for a commercial purpose. And when we ended up in court, this was like the contract said A, and we were saying that this is what we had agreed on. And that reminded me of the fact that, if we had engaged a lawyer from the beginning, we probably would have avoided all this.
Exactly.
So, quick one. I used to run this savings thing with secondary schools, and you remember that also. And I remember when I started, I was so scared that the banks would take my idea from me. So I think I went to do, was it copyright? Or I did something that gave me some protection for like 15 years or so. How do you protect your idea as a startup, as a small business, and you have come up with an innovative idea? Is there a way that I can take to protect that idea so that nobody, so you hear that, oh, I took this proposal here, they didn't give me the money. I took this proposal to a bank, they didn't give me the money, and someone else is doing it. Is an NDA enough, or I should go, there's a step that I should go beyond?
So with ideas, you have to, first of all, you have to document it. You have to identify the idea and document it. And to also mention, it's not every idea that is
new.
Yes, it's not every idea that is new. It's not every idea that can be protected by law. It should be authentic. It doesn't necessarily have to be a new idea, but it should be original, it should be authentic and worthy of protection as well. So it could be either a writing, it could be art, it could be music, it could be any other thing. So when it comes to copyright, that one is mostly for the arts. That one you have to go to the copyright office to go and register it, to make sure that, also before that you have to conduct a search at the relevant authority to make sure that that hasn't already been registered by any other person, so that you don't go and use that work and then expose yourself to any form of liability. So you have to make sure that that work hasn't been registered already. If not, you can go ahead and register it in your name to protect it.
Okay. Yeah. Again, I use myself as an example, and I wouldn't say, I had to learn the hard way that I needed legal representation when the whole conversation about we leaving the space we're operating in came up. So initially we thought it was just something. Then until we received a letter, that was when we realized that we had to get representation. How relevant or how important is it for me or for any person running a business to have legal representation, even when you're having a normal negotiation?
Okay, I would say it's very, very important. Lawyers are they have all the legal knowledge, they've acquired legal knowledge in the substantive law in relation to the specific area. They know the procedural laws as well. So it's best for you to have legal representation. Even though the law allows a private individual to represent him or herself in court, it's more appropriate for you to have a lawyer by your side. If not, because there will be drafting of court processes, there will be court procedure, which, let me say, a layman wouldn't know. So it's best for you to have a lawyer by your side. Also, the lawyer would provide emotional support for the clients, in the sense that they kind of take your stress away. Because you're already dealing with business stress, you are losing your money and all of that, then you have to stress about how to draft a court process, which you have no idea about. Like, why go through that stress when you have to just pay someone to do that job for you?
Just pay.
Yeah.
All right. So I think it's a payment part that most of us or most people run away from. But then eventually you realize that you end up paying more.
Yes.
Than you probably would have if you had
and you may even lose more.
Yeah.
Yes, because you risk losing your entire business. But if you could have paid a lawyer to save your entire business for you, that would have been a win-win. So.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, I've lived that. Again, so the question also was whether even at the negotiation stage where we are not considering going to court, you think that I should be able to? Is it so easy to just find a lawyer and get them follow you to have a negotiation?
Yes, it is. So you just walk into any law firm. You can check online. There are so many law firms that are listed out there. So you can just engage them obviously you pay consultation fees because they are going to use their time to represent you in that negotiation.
Right.
So they would help you put everything, your best interest on paper, ensure that the whole process is complied with, and then everything is sorted even before the business starts.
Right. I remember you also mentioned that if you are drafting any contract, you should consider ADR as part of the, I mean, like the
Yes.
first step before,
Yes.
even if you have to go to court.
Yes.
And why would you recommend that? Why is that so important?
It's important because it actually saves you time. It saves you costs. And then it's also like the chances of having a good outcome is high. I'll say this because in litigation, you don't get to choose the judge that is going to sit on your case. With mediation, you are free to choose any mediator to help you reach an agreement. With negotiation as well, it's also you and the other party that you are contracting with, and maybe with legal representation. So with that, you can both agree and then settle on a middle ground. So yeah, it's very important.
So ADR
Yeah.
is okay. Then, I mean, I've also had labor. So I remember that was when during Ghana, the Labor Commission came around. So they came, did a bit of training for us about employing, how the kind of contract you give to our employees. How do we ensure that we are able to comply with the Ghanaian labor law? I mean, usually when you are employing people, there's how much I want to pay. And then you are probably running till Senate comes in and say, young man, you've been working for
Yeah.
X, you haven't paid your Senate, you probably haven't paid PAYE. Or how do you get yourself ready to deal with all these compliance issues?
So I would say businesses, before they even get to the point where they are employing people, they should abreast themselves with the labor laws. You should understand it. If you are not able to understand it, you can engage a lawyer to go through the laws with you. But I would say that you have to understand them. You have to know that you have to comply with them. Also, you have to have written contracts because you never know what an employee would turn around and do to you. They may institute legal action for one thing or the other. So it's better for you to put down your contracts in writing. It's good for you to know the laws. Also with the SNIT aspect, you also have to know your tax laws. Yes, because you are required to pay taxes on behalf of your employees. So you should know all those things before you employ people.
I mean, again, like I said jokingly, I'm better running a chop bar than running a registered business. Moving away from business a bit and looking at what other issues are going on. So I completed uni not long ago, but I have at least 4 or 5 of my colleagues who are already divorced. And growing up, I know that divorce wasn't that common. I mean, the families I knew growing up are still together. Those that have started, I mean, my age seems to be going through a lot of divorce issues. I don't know what the issue is, but the rates seem to be going up. What's your observation?
Yeah, I would say the rates are going up and they are attributable to different factors. Some of these factors I would say are one of them importantly is access to legal education. Nowadays there are so many lawyers out there, and the lawyers are also not being quiet. They are spreading the word, letting you know how you can go about to divorce, how you can dissolve a marriage. Not that it is right, but people actually need that education.
Okay.
And I think that is one of the things that is pushing it. Also the internet, you can just Google something, because back in the days it wasn't like that, but now information has come to us, education has come to us, and you can just get information on the internet and then.
All right. So what factors do you think are contributing to the increased rate of divorce?
Okay, so I would say one main thing is access to legal education. Right now, there's access to information, there's access to education. Unlike back in the days where it was difficult to access information, most people were going through hard times in their divorce, but there was nowhere to turn to, but now that has changed. Now there's education everywhere. You know that you can engage a lawyer. You can engage a lawyer who can assist you go through a divorce.
Okay. So I mean, if you're looking at a lawyer to guide you going through a divorce, what are the steps? What steps will you go through? I mean, if one is considering divorce.
So if you are considering divorce, obviously you have to go and see your lawyer. Your lawyer would ask you questions. You have a client conference with the client. So you discuss, you have to let the lawyer know the reasons why you want to divorce, because that's very key. A court of law will not dissolve a marriage where it is of the opinion that the marriage hasn't broken down beyond reconciliation. So that's very key. You have to know the reasons why you want to divorce. Then if the lawyer is of the view that you have a good course of action, then you can go ahead and then start the process by drafting a petition. Yeah, so you have to engage the lawyer formally. You have to go to sign an engagement letter where you know your legal fees to be paid and then the course of action to follow.
Okay. I mean, how do the courts in Ghana deal with divorce? Is it that once we go with our story, I want a divorce and I have a lawyer, does that solve the problem?
No, it doesn't. So as I mentioned earlier, you have to show that the marriage has broken down beyond reconciliation. That's the only ground on which a court of law would dissolve a marriage. Even so, the courts may also give you the opportunity to try settlement. During the divorce proceedings, you may be given opportunity to engage in settlement. But then I would say that the courts are reluctant to immediately dissolve a marriage. That's because of the provisions in the Matrimonial Causes Act.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. I mean, so in a case where two parties are seeking divorce and there's property, how is that distributed?
So first, the courts of law resort to the principle of equitable distribution. So with this, the courts would consider the needs of the parties. The courts will consider the financial contributions that were used in acquiring the properties. The courts will also consider the duration of the marriage.
Alimony and then maintenance. I mean, how does the court deal with alimony?
The courts, so as the factors that I mentioned earlier, the court also relies on some of these factors, the earning capacities of the parties, to determine which party should get what. Yes. So with that, the court may also ask the parties to file an affidavit of means, which is a full financial disclosure of their
what they have, what
yes,
they own.
what they earn, their expenditure, and all of that. So with that, the court will determine how much should go to which party.
Wow. In cases where there are kids involved, how do they deal with this? Custody issues, how do they deal with all these issues? Does the court is it easy for that to be determined in the court?
I would say it's not easy because divorce generally is not easy. But then the court makes determination as to the custody of the child, also makes determination as to right of access to the child, and also for maintenance out of the properties of the marriage. But then with that, the courts would consider, when it comes to custody, the courts consider certain factors such as the age and then the gender of the child. So ordinarily, a young female child is given to the mother to be taken care of, because a daughter needs the mother. And if it's a young child, obviously the young child needs the mother. But then where the character of the mother is impeached, then for that one, the father will be given custody. Also, the court looks at the jurisdiction of the party, maybe the other parties outside Ghana. Having to move the child from one jurisdiction to the other might be a problem. So the child will be given custody. Maybe the parents in one jurisdiction where the child was raised would be given custody of the child. Also, the court considers siblings. So where maybe there are about 4 children living with the mother, the court would not necessarily split them and then give maybe 2 children to the father and then 2 they are usually made to grow up together, so custody will be given to one parent.
Wow. So it looks like children are really affected when it comes to divorce.
Yes, they are affected. It's often said that where two elephants fight is the grass that suffers, and then in this case, the children would be the grass. So they really suffer a lot. They suffer a lot.
Okay.
Yeah.
So how does divorce affect the parties? Does it affect the women differently? Does it affect the men differently?
Generally, I would say it affects them the same way.
Okay.
Because these are two individuals that were once in love, they grew up together, they've lived for some time together, and then now they are attached. But now you have to split them up in terms of their finances, in terms of emotionally, in terms of physically and all of that. They are going to be split up. So definitely there will be some scars, there will be hurts, there will be emotional damage, there will be anxiety, there will be frustration, anger, and all of that.
So in cases where, let's say, we've been to court, finally we are divorced, is there any way that the court makes room for some sort of emotional, psychological support? Are there such, or is we have to rely on society for this support?
For that support, unfortunately, the courts don't offer anything. Once the decree is given, that's it. You go your separate ways and then you are done with the courts. The only kind of support you can get is maybe from church or from your family or from other societal groups that offer such kind of support. But aside that, our society doesn't really do that.
So, from the beginning of the conversation, you mentioned that it was the way you used to ask questions, had interaction with young lawyers, and you probably got an interest to actually go and pursue law. Would you say that the interest alone is enough, or what advice will you give to young people who are looking at pursuing law?
Okay, I'll say the interest is about 60% of it. Once you are interested in something, you do all at it, you pursue it, no matter what comes your way. Pursuing law is not as easy as it may seem. Obviously, you've heard of things like entering Ghana School of Law is difficult, but if you persevere, you'll be able to make it. And it's not just for the young ones. You can do it.
Don't worry.
Yes, it's not just for the young ones. No matter the age you've reached, no matter the stage of life, if that is your passion, that is what you want to become, you can become a lawyer, go to school, start the course. Within a matter of years, you'll be done, and then you'd appreciate it.
All right. From my experience, and having been to court, well, I say once because of the business that I do, I am of the view that one, we should engage lawyers at the very beginning of our businesses. And if you also need to draft any form of contract or sign any form of contract, have a lawyer in your corner that you can work with. And possibly, if you can even have one on your board, that is fine. I don't know how many people have lawyer friends. I have you, I have a few other lawyer friends that I can count on. But what do you think that is easy to have a lawyer in your corner? If I don't have a friend lawyer, how easy is it to find a lawyer? Can you just make friends and then that makes it possible for you to have them in your corner, or everything that is done comes with you having to make payment?
So it's two things. As you said, you can have lawyer friends and you don't know where you would meet someone.
Yeah.
So socializing, you can still meet someone at any time. Secondly, you can also check online. You can find law firms. There are contacts you can call to access a lawyer.
Okay. Yeah. So you agree with me that everybody should have a lawyer in their corner?
Yes, you should.
That's a lot of money for you lawyers. All right, Nella. I'll say thank you very much for coming on. And this has been a very brief conversation, but I know that we'll probably touch up with you again in future.
Sure.
We wish you all the best in your career as a lawyer.
Thank you.
All right. You want to go to the bar?
Hmm?
You won't go to the bench top.
If the Lord we'll go there.
All right.